these aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden, and it is 5 Fact Friday. I am in an absolutely shockingly awful mood today. I don't know if it's because it's Friday the 13th. I can't pin it on anything in particular. I don't know if it's because of the sheer amount of bad news for the economy and for the housing market in terms of housing market function and transaction volumes. Don't care about prices. I just warning you, okay? I'm just woken up in one of those moods today. I haven't been able to shake it off. I'm probably going to swear, as you can see. That's a new word I've invented today. It's not a swear word. It's a conglomeration of fact and fucked. So it derives from a swear word, but it isn't, okay? 5 Fucked Friday. At least I'm cheering myself up. Can everybody hear me? Because I've had one call this morning where I've got the gremlins are out and things are saying things aren't working. Can someone just tell me in the live chat that you can actually hear me? Because I had a call this morning with someone who swore blind that my microphone wasn't working, but I've tested it and it is. Can anybody hear me? Anyone? Thumbs up, anything, any sign. Come on, just one person. Otherwise, I'm just talking to a camera and you can't hear me. Yes. Right, okay. I don't know if you can hear me. No one is confirming. No one is answering in the live chat that you can hear me. And I've got to switch on Instagram as well. There we are. Loud and clear. Thank you, Mark, very much. Thank you. I think there's a bit of a delay in the live chats coming through to me. Right. Excellent. Let's crack on. Thank you, Tony McDade. Coley Dean, thank you. Excellent. Brilliant. Okay. It's obviously about a 30-second delay between me asking and it actually appearing on my screen. Never mind. Let me crack on. So I will run through all 5 of the facts as a headline first, for those of you who don't want to sit here and listen to me swearing for the next hour. We have had, these are, and again, for the many new followers here, 5 Fact Friday is when I present the 5 new, and again, the only critics I have of this do not seem to be able to grasp the concept of it must be some new information in the last 7 days, okay? So saying to me, why didn't you talk about immigration, Charlie? Because there's no new information about that in the last 7 days that affects the housing market any differently than it did the week before, okay? So it's got to be new information in the last 7 days that is verifiable and the source of the facts can be verified, okay? And they are, in my view, the 5 most significant new pieces of verifiable information, also known as fact, that have been reported that affect the housing market in the last 7 days. There are far more than this, by the way. I had more than 10 to choose from this week, all of which are important things. But these are the 5 I picked. And if anyone thinks that there's news that came out that is more impactful in either a positive or a negative way than something that I've said here, could you please provide me with a link to the newly reported, because literally every single time someone responds to this, every single time on a Friday, I ask for challenges and I get challenges. The challenges are always stuff that either isn't in the last 7 days or isn't a verifiable news source that I can check. Literally, no one ever comes up with something that meets those 2 simple criteria. Verifiable fact from the last 7 days. That's all it has to be that, in your opinion, it affects the housing market. Right. I don't know how I can ramble on for 4 minutes without saying anything. Fact number 1. We had a report out from the Recruitment and Employment Confederation in conjunction with KPMG, the big consulting firm, about a steep reduction in permanent staff placements. So basically job vacancies falling at the fastest rate for the last 4 years. I'm doing my summary, aren't I? Oh, it's just such a bad day today. We're going to have a quick look at Angela Rayner's self-contradicting interview on housing, and I will explain when I've shown it why I think it is bad news for the housing market. Number 3, 5-year mortgage rates have jumped, the highest since August 2023, I think. Not a huge jump, but a significant one, and it's just rates going up. People aren't expecting mortgage rates to go up, but they are. And that does not help the housing market, does it? We've had the RICS November housing market survey results out, which some people have said to me, "Oh, Charlie, it seems really positive." I've had a look at it. I can't see anything really positive in there, but we'll go through it. Out this morning, we have got news that the ONS has reported that GDP is down. The economy is contracting. It has contracted for October was the second month in a row that it's contracted. Where do we think it's going from October? Up or down? We'll talk about that. And the government has published its intentions for planning reform. And whilst that's not going to make any difference to the housing market anytime soon, whether they do or don't get it passed will make a big difference to the housing market in the long term, because if they actually manage to reform the planning laws, that will be huge. Right. So there we are. Fact number 1 is jobs. The jobs market is getting worse and worse, right? I could go and pull up countless examples of people warning of more job layoffs, warning of more job. I even heard someone from the police. I just caught it on the radio this morning. I didn't catch which policeman it was, but some senior policeman was saying they're going to have job layoffs because they haven't got enough money, partly because of the national insurance rises. Couldn't make it up. Honestly, it's this government's incompetence, even above its policy choices. Its actual sheer incompetence and cluelessness is what's going to do this economy the most harm. Okay, let's have a look at our Angie and what she's got to say for herself. Someone's told me that you can't hear the video. Okay, the link to it. It's not muted. Can you hear me now? This is honestly, this is just a bad day all around. Okay, Angela Rayner has an absolute car crash of an interview where she contradicts herself and she says there isn't a housing crisis, but there is, but there isn't. There isn't a shortage of houses. There is a shortage of houses, which is why we're going to build more, but there isn't also. And she doesn't acknowledge the sheer basic maths of what she's talking about. And I have been a sort of cautious supporter of Angela Rayner's because I feel that she's the kind of character that actually gets stuff done. And she's making promises about the biggest social house building since World War II. And that's great news because that solves many housing problems if they build enough social housing. My worry is that she's out of her depth. In this interview, she was completely out of her depth. So on the one hand, she's saying things that I welcome and go, yes, please do that. That'd be great if you can actually do it. On the other hand, I don't believe she can get it done. The link, if you want to hear it, the link to the video is in the description below, and have a listen because it's just awful and embarrassing. And it makes me think to myself, I can't keep on publicly supporting you when you're that much of a, when you're that much out of your depth, and it just makes me worry. Anyway, that's fact number 2. Angela Rayner talking about the housing market, contradicting herself. She's a deputy prime minister. She should have a better grasp of what's going on. Right, fact number 3, planning reform working paper, planning committees. And actually, this is the one I want to share. I'm not going to go into this in detail. There's too much nitty gritty, and it's not going to make any difference to anything in this parliament. I don't think. That's my point, right? I just want to pick up these 2 paragraphs from the summary. The government is interested in views on the creation of smaller, targeted planning committees. More committees, it thinks. This is what makes me think that the government hasn't got a clue how to implement its good intentions. Okay, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, but more smaller committees? Really? I mean, I understand their thinking, but in the real world, anyway, as well as the introduction of mandatory requirement for training for planning committee members. Okay, even if they do this, how long is that going to take? All 3 reforms would require changes to primary legislation through the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. There's no chance of this getting done in this government. That's my point. I have no idea what's going to happen, but based on their progress, their lack of progress, their lack of cohesive thinking, the absolute shit show that it is at the moment, even if they try, I don't think they even understand how slow and difficult it's going to be. And therefore, I think the chances of them passing primary legislation, which they have to pass before any changes can actually begin, right, in this parliament are negligibly small. I think that there is a very, very small chance of this happening. Even if they did pass the legislation in this government, that's just the first thing that has to happen before the actual changes get implemented. And how long did changes in the civil service and the public sector take to enact? They take forever. Everyone digs their heels in. No one wants it to change. It's not going to happen. And the relevance to the housing market is this, because if they are relying on changes to the planning, the Town and Country Planning Act, to get their housing building targets met, there's just no chance. There's no chance of it happening. I mean, they've moved quite fast. It's taken them 5 months of being government to get to this stage. So 5 months to publish information that's asking for a consultation. Where is it? It's the working paper. Working paper, planning committee paper, 0 actual action, right? There's just anyone who thinks, the people who say, oh, well, come on, I haven't given them a chance yet. Let's give them 5 years and see where they've got to. You don't need to wait 5 years to see that this isn't going to happen. I'd be happy to be proved wrong. Right, next one is average 5-year mortgage sees biggest monthly rate rise since August 2023. So the average 5-year fixed mortgage rates have seen their largest monthly increase since just over a year ago, as reported by Money Facts in December. The average 5-year fixed rate rose by almost 0.2% to 5.28%, while the 2-year fixed rate climbed 0.13% to 5.52%. These are the average rates. There are, of course, products for more and for less than that. These are the average rates. But my point is, given that the entire market is fueled by mortgage lending, and when the average of lending rates go up, it decreases activity. And when they go down, it increases activity. This is not good. And we've already, as the RACS thing, which is the next up, shows, there's the bit of increase in activity that we saw has now started to ease off. I've got to hide the comments because they're distracting me. Anyway, that's fact number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's not. That's I can't even count. Never mind. On to the next one. Let's get into the RACS residential survey and quickly cover that. Okay, because apparently it was reported as a positive thing. Because this is the problem. If you don't actually go and look at the source data, and if you only go by let alone news articles, even if people just look at the headlines, not beyond. I had multiple comments this week saying, "Oh, but Charlie, the RICS report's really good." It really isn't. Let's have a look at it. I mean, I'd love to know if anyone who messaged me that had actually looked at the report itself, or whether it was news reports that they were parroting at me. The measures of buyer demand remain positive, with house price growth appearing to gain traction. So, taken at face value, that is saying that there's no change in buyer demand, and that you've got to understand how this survey works to understand the context of this comment. House price growth appears to gain traction. That's not a confident statement, right? So it's worth me reminding everybody that the RICS is a survey of around about 200 surveyors who are also estate agents from around the country. Okay, it's quite a thin. I've always been a fan of this survey as being sort of from the coalface, but it is a sentiment survey. It is not, and it doesn't measure prices. It does sales and lettings, but it doesn't actually measure price movements. It's literally up or down. Do you think up or do you think down? And it's the number of people saying up versus the number of people saying down. There is zero measurement of actual prices or actual transactions or anything like that. If you, this document actually contains the survey questions that you can go read for yourself, and it's just like up, down, up and down, up and down. And, it works quite well. I'm not criticizing it, but it's important you understand that. Also, this came out this week. These survey questions were actually answered about a month ago. So about a month ago was mid-November, early to mid-November. And it was shortly after it's kind of reflecting what was happening in October and November. So it's not what's happening today. But let's just have a look at some of the details. So new buyer inquiries again points to a slight pickup in demand. This could come down to literally one more surveyor than last year when, yeah, actually, I've seen a few more inquiries this month. That's it. That's what can lead to that headline. Although sales appear to have leveled off over the month. That means the number of sales being agreed. And again, there are no numbers provided. It's just, was this month better or worse than last month? Okay. National house price indicator continues to move higher. Again, we'll look at the graph, but that's just slightly more people than last month saying that they think, they don't measure it, they don't actually check it, that they think house prices are moving higher. The near-term outlook for activity, moderately positive, despite the recent rise in mortgage interest rates. Well, when this was put together, they've risen again since then. Right, I'm not going to go into the. So, there is one thing here. So there's a 1% change from 11% to 12% in the net balance of positive responses on new buyer inquiries. A 1% increase. It's almost like you're talking about two people, two more surveyors than last month saying, yeah, actually, we had a few more inquiries this month. Let's get down to the graphs. By the way, that's the page of questions asked, by the way, all right? Down, same, up. That's how scientific it is. How have average prices changed the last 3 months? You've got to remember, a lot of these guys don't actually even measure their average prices. It's literally, you're a surveyor, what do you think? Down, same, or up. So it's a good overall reading of the overall market. But what's more important is to look at the regional breakdowns. So national prices in the past 3 months, right? And that's gone up from, well, about there to about there. So that's the net balance of surveyors reporting an increase in prices in the last 3 months. A month ago for the 3 months before that. All right. And if you remember, there was a bit of an uptick in activity then. And yeah, we've also got the stamp duty that was announced at the beginning of October. Survey was beginning of October, wasn't it? So the budget, I mean, which saw an uptick in activity as well. And then here you've got the regional breakdown on the right. Northern Ireland still way more positive than anywhere else. The Northwest is the second most positive for prices, not transactions. And the others are you can see where they are. Just have a look for it yourself. National inquiries in the past month, right? So this improvement, this uptick in buyer demand, is that infinitesimally small, little tiny uptick there, right? But that's getting reported as an improving market. I'm sorry, that to me, that's not even the margin of error of this survey. Now, buyer inquiries in the past month, on the right-hand side of the page here, again, this is how many are seeing an increase in buyer inquiries in the last month compared to the month before. And they're doing this from memory. I mean, they don't measure the actual numbers. And I know because the numbers are within CRM systems, and the CRM systems aren't used properly, and they don't provide this data unless you use it to the nth degree, which most agents don't. New instructions, yeah, it's basically where it was and the past month. Slightly more new instructions, again, regionally, not so much in Northern Ireland. Scotland, fewer, and East Anglia, fewer. But these, when it's such a small reading on the zero, it doesn't really tell us anything about those markets. Newly agreed sales in the past month down to almost zero in terms of the balance. That means that's the same number of people say that they're rising as say that they're falling. So when you even it out, it's zero. 50% of them went, yeah, a few more sales. 50% went, oh, a few less sales. And then it breaks it down by region over here. And again, there aren't any particularly strong readings anywhere. So that tells us that there's not much change in agreed sales in the past month. Regional price expectations in the next 3 months. Now, this is a really difficult problem to pinpoint, but a really important problem to understand. This time last week, I was at a national estate agents conference, an annual conference get-together of a group of independent estate agents. I was there as a guest, and they put up on stage for one of the talks for the day was an economist giving his opinions on the economy and the housing market. And this particular economist could not conceal his politics or his bias. He gave such a one-sided view about everything, and indeed his own data conflicted itself. I asked a question pointing out that his data conflicted himself, and he fobbed it off with, oh, well, that's just politics, isn't it? I said, your numbers say that on that slide, and on the other slide, your numbers say that. Which is it? Because it can't be both. And he just didn't have an answer. And so you've got estate agents around the country taking their views on the economy from this guy who's been doing it for them for 15 years, and nobody challenges him, and he talks utter testicles. Honestly, he talks total and utter testicles, because it's not bad. It's just he's been an academic his entire life. He's never done anything other than being an economist for hire since he was at university. He's never run businesses or done jobs or anything else like that. He made throwaway comments about, oh, well, employers' national insurance contributions is such a small amount of what employers pay. It's not going to really make a difference, is it? Anyway, the point is that the agents responding to surveys like this one are having their views on the economy influenced by the kind of guy I just described. And so you get this inherent optimism. Okay, there is this misplaced or overstated emphasis within the property industry that, oh, it's all about confidence, it's all about sentiment. And whilst it's true to an extent, it's not only about that. And so what agents want to hear from their advisors is, everything's great, it's going to be great, it's all great, everything's great, Everyone's got to move. Don't worry about the naysayers. Don't worry about the doom mongers. Don't worry about the headlines. Everything's going to be great. It's just going to be great. And if you try and go, well, hang on a second, there's a few bits of data that are quite right. Oh, don't be so negative. Don't be such a down. No, it's just got to be good. And they're like, we don't care about the data. We just want positivity and confidence. That's all we want, because that's what makes people sell houses. And it's not the case. The standoff in prices and the false optimism is what's leading sellers to overprice. And by the way, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you an example of one of the worst pieces of overvaluing on a property by an agent. And you can see which agent it is. It's just shocking. And it's a very, very good cautionary tale to any seller who's new to the market about how to avoid this particular pitfall, right? And this pitfall is fueled by false optimism. I'm not positive or negative. I just want to look at the cold, hard truth of what's happening as much as we can. Oh, nobody knows what's happening in the future. It's just no one's got a crystal ball. You don't know what's going to happen. That is just simply not true. You in the same way that you can see which direction an oil tanker is heading, and therefore it's going to continue heading in that general direction for quite some time, you can do the same with the economy. So this regional price expectations, I don't understand why in most areas their price expectations in the next 3 months are so positive. Perhaps it's because, I beg their pardon, right? Because perhaps it's because of the stamp duty stampede, okay? Where a lot of buyers are going, I don't care how much I pay for the house, as long as I don't pay stamp duty. Literally, that is happening right now, okay? You've got buyers who just go, pay tax, pay property, I'll pay for the property. You can borrow money to buy property. You can't borrow money to pay stamp duty. So I do understand why it happens, but it doesn't make any sense to overpay for a property just to avoid stamp duty. But that's happening. It is happening. And therefore, maybe these surveyors are going, well, while we've got all these buyers rushing to beat the stamp duty deadline and overbidding and competing against each other to buy, yeah, maybe prices of the next 3 months will go up. Sorry, guys, I'm not on my game today. But actually, this graph on the left kind of backs up my point about their optimism, because this is their national price expectations over the next 3 and 12 months. And what you can see here is that going back 12 years, the dark line is their national price expectations for the next 3 months. And the light blue dotted line is their national price expectations a year from now. And if you can see that, their 12-month expectations are always higher than the 3-month ones. And looking back, you can see that for some reason, over the longer term, they're always more optimistic. Always, 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 as they are right now. Okay? Whether it happens or not, that is an inherent over-optimistic bias by those surveyors. I'm not going to spend much more time on this. There's lots more detail in it. You can see it yourself. I've linked to this document yourself if you want to go and have a look at it. Have a look at the breakdown for your areas, the regional breakdowns, and have a look at lettings if it affects you too, because if you're a landlord, it's all there, right? But look at that national tenant demand. That's newsworthy. The national tenant demand. I've been saying this for a couple of years, that as the economy weakens and as unemployment gets worse and as wage growth stops, national tenant demand will come down despite immigration and despite population numbers, because people without money can't buy or rent. And there will be more people with no money as job losses increase, which they are, as job vacancies decrease, which they are, as GDP decreases, which it is, as layoffs increase, which they are. All of this leads to an increase in the number of people with no money. And when there are fewer people with money to pay rent and mortgages, guess what happens? That demand line goes down. So that's what you can see there. And look at that long-term trend. That's been since the start of the pandemic. It's been a gradual trend over those years, but a very, very definite trend. And this is the first month where the lettings national tenant demand has turned into a negative balance. In other words, more surveyors saying that they are seeing a reduction in tenant demand than surveyors saying they're seeing an increase nationally. That actually, if I'd been a journalist, would have been the headline I would have picked out of this month's RACS survey. And look, there we are. London there has got the most negative in terms of tenant demand in the past 3 months, right? London, the southwest, the second most negative, and the northwest, the third most negative, with Wales really high, interestingly. Right, that's enough on that. That's enough on that. Let's get on to GDP. I'm just having a quick look at yeah, right. Okay. So the GDP figures that came out this morning, what they're saying is that monthly GDP is estimated to have fallen by 0.1% in October, largely because of a decline in production output. This follows a fall of 0.1 in September as well. Okay, so we're now in December. So there's a 1 month lag in this. I note that they don't appear to have amended or revised September's figure yet. Let's get down to a couple of the graphs here. So if you look at that trend line starting in 2008, that trend line would have gone up to somewhere up here. So we are way, way, way below the trend of the last 15 years, and flatlining and now creeping down a bit. That's monthly GDP. That's the last 2 years. Again, you look at the overall trend in that, and it's the services that are looking the most negative. But construction, production, and services all negative in the latest readout there. Look at that. Services negative, production negative, construction negative. And that's on top of the jobs data that we've had. All right, guys. So what am I trying to say here? I will come on to there's one more. This is an extra fact, right, which I just find interesting, and I don't know the reasons for it. People over 55 years old are the fastest growing tenant group. Now, I've no idea what the cause of this is. And actually, those aged 65 were the second fastest growing group. This is over a long term. Now, what I don't know is whether this is because of wise and savvy Gen Xers and boomers selling up and going into rented as higher value house prices just continue to slide, or whether it's because we have an increase in the number of people of that age who can't afford to buy or don't own their home. I don't know which one it is, but it's a worrying trend. I mean, hopefully, if it's because they're renting because they're investing their wealth elsewhere, well, maybe that's not a bad thing. We don't know the answer to that. I'm sure Housing Stig would have information on that. But nevertheless, that is a notable fact, I think. People over 55 years, the fastest, 55 and then 65 are the second fastest growing. So everyone over 55 is now the fastest growing tenant. And this is one of the things that's going to be pushing rents up, isn't it? Because people in that age bracket are going to be able to afford their rent more than the people in the 18 to 24 and the 24 to 35 group. Right. This is the point I want to make. And when I've made this point, I'll then come on to this horrifically overvalued property on Rightmove, which is a really cautionary tale of what can happen. And I know it's an anecdote. I'm not suggesting it's the whole market, but my worry here, I have a worry for two groups of people. Buyers who are currently in bidding frenzies and overpaying before stamp duty deadline, who are going to who right now are blinded to all the economic news that's pointing in one direction. There are now recession warnings all over the place, left, right, and center. Okay. I'm worried about buyers overpaying now and getting stuck in negative equity, and seeing the value of their personal net worth decline. Again, if you're buying for the long term, it doesn't matter. If you can afford and you're buying a home and you found somewhere you want to live and you're planning to stay there long term, and being in a home is important to you for non-financial reasons, always buy, but just try not to overpay. I'm more worried about the sellers, and this anecdote property I'm going to talk to you about next is a great example of exactly what can go wrong when you believe the bullshit and the guff that comes out of most of the industry, rather than actually going, listen, I don't care what the papers are saying, the market will determine the price of my house. As I've said in videos in the last couple of weeks, I think that at the top of the ladder property end of the market, sellers who are not selling, sitting on the market, are on average and generally speaking, overpricing by about 20%. This is made worse by house price indices going record house prices. And then the owners of these properties at the top of the ladder don't realize that's applying to much closer to the first time buyer level of property and not theirs. And so they don't hear the fact that, well, actually, at the higher end, prices are coming down. So they believe the three overvaluing agents who all tell them the same value of their property. They then get locked into a long solidity contract as the market slips away from them. And when that happens to you as a seller, the long-term consequences are much worse than if you had just met the market for your property when you first brought it to the market. Okay. And there are people going, oh, we're going to wait for the Boxing Day bounce. The Boxing Day bounce is bullshit. It's only a bounce in tire kicking online views. That's it. It's not a bounce in transactions. It's not a bounce in viewings. It's not a bounce in offers. And it doesn't translate into a bounce in sales. It's just people dreaming of moving on Boxing Day when they aren't at work and they're fed up with their family and they want to move somewhere else. If you don't price properly when you first come to the market and you miss that first opportunity to get competing buyers and find out what the true market for your house is, you instantly put yourself into a much more difficult scenario to sell. And then it takes a long time to come to terms with that, opt in with an agent for 6 months, and. And you end up getting to 1 or even 2 years down the line where you realize we've got no choice but to sell now. And you finally have to sell whatever the market is then. And you look back and go, what does it cost us not selling to begin with? How much extra does it cost us? Because again, there are people who still think house prices always go up. Well, there isn't one house price that applies to all properties. They're all doing different things. And at the moment, there is a lasting, significant trend in downsizing and people selling these much more expensive to heat and much more expensive to maintain properties at the top of the market. And there are lots of people who just can't sell them. And when you factor in layoffs increasing, the economy tanking, GDP, wage growth, all easing, going the wrong direction, it all compounds to people who are going to be ending up absolutely out on their uppers and destitute when they actually could have got themselves okay, cut their losses, and saved some of their net worth. That's what I'm seeing, right? I'm seeing people who are sitting there waiting for the housing market while their net worth disappears down the loo. Let me show you this, because honestly, I think that generally speaking, the market, it's the boiling frogs. Most of the population are unaware of the true extent of the economic challenges facing the country as a whole. I know that there are millions of people who are very comfortably off. Their job is good. Their job is secure. They're fine. Thank you very much. I know that there are plenty of people like that. But what matters is the delicate change in the balance of people who are well off and okay and people who aren't. And it's going the wrong way. The number of people who aren't well off and okay is increasing. And it's like if you imagine a massive, massive flat table or tray with a bit of water in it, and you only get a very, very slight change in the tray, and it all starts to flow down the other end. That's what's happening in slow motion to the economy, to people's finances. Let me show you this because it's unbelievable. There are several lessons we can take away from this, right? So this was on the market and it's been removed by the agent because it's gone to auction now, as we'll see in a minute, right? So this is on Rightmove. This property has been removed by the agent, and thanks to Property Log, we can see the history of this property. Now, this property was marketed by, right from the beginning, Allen and Harris in Bristol. And wherever you see those coloured dots like that, that means they're part of the Sequence Group, which is also owned by Connells, which many believe, myself included, are one of the worst offenders at excessive overvaluing and locking people into long sole agency contracts and mis-selling mortgages and conditional selling and all of the really bad habits. And I've got someone who used to work in a place like that who's going to come on the show and spill the beans about exactly what used to happen. They've now gone independent and they want to share that story. So I'm not making this up. So here we've got, this is publicly available. I'll put the link, I'm going to put the link in the live chat so that anyone who wants to go look at this yourself, you can. There it is in the live chat, the link to this property on Rightmove, right? And if you don't see those blue prices on there, that's because you don't have the Property Log extension on your Chrome browser. So let's just have a look. So first of all, it was listed on, are you ready for it? Boxing Day last year. Now, let's ignore the fact that it's literally a brick garden shed, right? Let's just ignore that for a minute. On Boxing Day, they launched this property at £450,000. Nothing then happened for almost 7 months. And what we know is that these companies make people sign long-term sole agency contracts. Now, this might be a probate sale. It might be, who knows what it is, right? But I bet you that the seller of this, we can tell the seller of this property was someone who didn't understand and was completely taken in. Look at that valuation, right? That is an insane overvalue. And the seller of this property could take action against this agent for overvaluing with the property ombudsman if they wanted to. And anyone who feels that they were knowingly misled by the agent on the value of their property, understand that you have got recourse. You can go to the property ombudsman and you can ask them to take action against the agent. Now, to me, this is cold, hard, smoking gun evidence of rampant overvaluing. Because look what they did. After 7 months, they dropped the price from £450,000 to £360,000. That is a £90,000 cut, which happens to be £90,000, if my mental arithmetic is correct, is 20% off that initial asking price. 1 month later, they took another 20 grand off, which means that they still obviously got no interest, right? From 360 to 340. 1 month later, they took another 15 grand off from 340 to 325. This is death by 1,000 cuts. This is chasing the market down, right? And then in September, they've gone, look, let's just stimulate demand for this property, shall we? And they've finally gone, right, so to do a proper cut. We're now down 180 grand from the initial asking price last December, right? And this was after 9 months or 10 months. And it still didn't sell. And we can now see from this that it's now sale by modern auction. What you have to think to yourself is now, with the benefit of hindsight, if you were the seller of this brick garden shed, what would you have done with hindsight? What would you have done? What would you not have done? So first of all, with the benefit of hindsight, we would not have flown a kite If you ever hear an agent say that to you, kick them out of your house immediately. It's like saying, I'm an unprofessional agent who doesn't understand the danger to you of doing this, and I don't know how to value a property, and I'm just probably going to get paid a commission for listing it. We could fly a kite at this price. Every seller who doesn't understand the market and doesn't understand the risks of overpricing will go, well, yeah, that sounds like a fly a kite. Is that a thing? Is that what people do? Honestly, if an agent says to you the phrase fly a kite when they're in your house trying to tell a valuation or what price, that is them trying to get you to sign their long sole agency contract. And you should literally say, actually, this isn't going to work. Thanks very much. Off you trot. Jog on. Fly a fucking kite. Flying a kite was someone's net worth. Flying a kite was someone's future prospects. Flying a kite for the sake of commercial opportunity for the agent. Flying a kite for a small listing commission. Flying a kite in a way that ends up disadvantaging that seller, as you've seen, right? Yeah, look, maybe there were problems with this property, but it doesn't matter. First of all, the problems should have been discovered by the agent to begin with. They should have been bringing it to market contract ready. They should, and all the material information they should have been publishing. A good agent would know of a serious problem, a problem serious enough to take 180 grand off that initial asking price, right? Whatever unexpected things might have come along, it doesn't explain that level of down valuing. So what should they have done? I mean, if they'd gone on the market a year ago at £300,000, there's a very good chance that they would have sold it for whatever the market demand for that property a year ago was, right? There's a much, much, much better chance, right? They might have sold it at 290 or 280, but they'd have got out of there a year ago with their 280, wouldn't they? Well, they might have got 310 or 320. Let's take a couple of questions. Kicking Mustang, hi there. If house prices are not moving, but data is constantly overvaluing, like the ONS, and then revised down a year or two later, headlines always scream house prices going up, even though the prices haven't changed. That's correct. He's pointing out the fact that the adjustments and the revisions that don't get published then create the future illusion of prices going up when they haven't. It's whether or not it's an intentional fraud, it is absolutely a fraud to continue, for the government to continue telling the country that house prices are rising when they're not. Nick Weir asks, would a mortgage valuation provide a more meaningful value? Just a thought. Yeah, I mean, it'll be a more, because you've got to remember that estate agents aren't valuers. And when they come around to talk to you about selling your house, they're actually just pitching their services. They may call it a valuation, but A, it's not a fucking valuation. They're not valuing your property. And B, they're not actually qualified to give you a valuation. You have to pay a licensed surveyor or licensed valuer for an actual valuation. But again, a lot of sellers just don't know this. If you want an unbiased professional expert opinion on the value of your home, the only way to get that is with a red book valuation. And even those are still estimates. They're just better estimates. So Flashmorph asks, what's my comment on Chris Watkins' data that shows pound per square foot hitting record highs again? It's a national average. It's not adjusted for inflation. And I have major question marks over the accuracy of the square foot measurements, because as a supplier of floor plans to estate agents for many years myself, and knowing the difference between the RICS approved measuring methodology and other methods of measuring a property, where there is an inherent bias on the part of the person creating the floor plan to make it look and sound bigger, to try and justify a bigger valuation, and that happens in the real world, because I know of successful occasions where buyers have sued an agent for overstating floor plans. I don't know how accurate the price per square foot data is. I don't know what the sample size is or anything like that. So I can't offer a real comment on it. But you'd have to really get to the nuts and bolts of where that's happening, because I can tell you that price per square foot at the higher end of the property market is coming down very, very fast. Price per square foot could be going up on smaller properties as they become more sought after by both downsizers and people going for first-time buyers or second-time buyer properties. There are all kinds of things. So it is in the same way that a national average house price is totally useless and misleading to individuals wondering if it affects their property, the price per square foot is the same. Now, what would be very, very handy is to have accurate square foot measurements for all properties and an accurate register of price per square foot. So again, I can talk to Chris about this. I'd be curious to know about it. But again, if the price per square foot, I mean, prices always hit record highs, don't they? The only time that things wouldn't consistently hit a record high is if there wasn't any inflation. But simply because of nominal price inflation on all things, it's a record high. It's a record high. It's a record high. It's a record high. It's like the whole thing about record highs is a red herring. It's meaningless. And it only means something to people who don't understand it. Oh, record highs. Oh, must be a good time to sell. Must be a good time to get lied to about the value of my property. Well, record highs. I mean, if it's a record high, maybe we could get a record high for our price, right? The record highs thing is just completely misleading guff, because it is not contextually valid. Guys, I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it. I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not on my best game today at all. I'm still in an absolutely shockingly bad mood. I hope it hasn't come across too much. Thank you to all of those of you who've been booking the one-to-one video calls with me. You can, and sorry it's taken me a while to get to you because there's a bit of a backlog, but if you want to, you can book one-to-one calls with me, buymeacoffee.com/MHWC. If you want to talk to my brokers or my conveyancers, I now have 2 firms of conveyancers, Sweeney Miller in Sunderland, who are excellent, and Thomas Legal in the south, there in Gloucester. Talk to my guys. Get yourself prepared before you go to market, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Get yourself prepared before you go to market and be in control of those important decisions. Don't end up being swept along by agents forcing you to use their own house this or your own house that. I'm not saying use my guys. I'm just saying make your choice. Choose an independent whole of market mortgage broker yourself before you go looking for properties. In America, your broker, as a buyer, your buying agent won't even get you to view properties until you've got your finances approved, right? Talk to a whole of market independent mortgage broker and make sure you know what your buying position is before you go viewing. It's a waste of everyone's time if you don't do that. Or you end up being sucked into a broker who's got a backdoor deal going on with the agent and it's not in your interest and you're going to get turned over. As a seller, if you choose your conveyancer first and actually appoint your conveyancer and get your property sale pack ready before you choose your agent, you will get a lower fee from your agent, right? Even the very best agents with the very highest fees. I've met agents and said, if a seller came to you with a complete and ready sale pack for their property, ready to come to market, would you do a lower fee for them? Yes, of course we would. They've massively reduced the workload. They've massively reduced the risk. They've made the property more saleable, and they've demonstrated their commitment to sell. So of course that seller gets a lower fee. This is why, by the way, agents don't publicly quote fees, because it depends on you as a seller, how much work you're going to be, how much of a pain in their arse you're going to be, how unrealistic you're going to be, right? Do yourself a favor if you are serious about selling. Come to the market before you talk to agents, get yourself contract ready. You will sell faster. You will get more buyers competing for your property and therefore get a better price. And your agent will definitely take money off your fee, unless they're already a stupidly cheap agent, in which case you shouldn't go with them anyway. And if you want to talk to one of my firm of conveyancers, you can do so there. And you'll see on the form there it says, do you have a preference to whether you want to talk to a conveyancer from the north or the south, or no preference? It's up to you. And if you want to talk to my fantastic independent whole of market mortgage brokers I've been working with now for well over 2 years, mhwc.co.uk/mortgage. You can talk to Lewis or the guys at Hudson Rose. Absolutely fantastic. I get nothing but good feedback. Nothing but good feedback about those guys. And just get prepared. Still, yeah, I know you still got I'll have to come and get those beers. I'll look forward to next time I'm passing. I'll come by and either consume them with you or take. I'm not taking them away, but I'll look forward to next time I see you. Good fun. Toby says, will London rents increase for flats in 2025? At the moment, London rents are decreasing. And this is where I know there's a whole deep dive to do about immigration figures and population numbers and that kind of stuff. But what's happening, and the reason that we aren't seeing the kind of house prices you might expect, house price increases and rent increases you might expect with the population increase that we're getting, is that the occupation density will be rising. More people moving back in with their parents. There's no official data for this. When we do get it, it's very, very, very lagged. More people moving back in with their parents. More people taking in lodgers in family homes. More renters sharing. All of these things absorb population increase without increasing the pressure on the number of properties required, which is actually why I don't think we need to build 1.5 million homes. I don't think just building more homes solves the problem. There are definitely places where many more homes are needed very urgently, but they tend to be in concentrated locations. Yeah. Guys, forgive me. I'm just, and thank you for cheering me up, Kicking Mustang. Nothing's wrong, by the way. I just don't know why. I'm home alone with 3 children. That doesn't help your stress levels. I was working this morning to the sound of a hysterically screaming toddler. It's always oh God, it's never a great start. So I started the day behind the curve already. And I'm not on top of things here at home, but I'm about to try and rectify that. Anything else I need to sort out before I go? I don't think so. Any last minute questions? Liam O on YouTube says, I know a man named Joseph Fritzl who is renting out his basement free of charge if any of you are interested. Times are hard. There are always options. Right, on that happy note, have a great weekend. See you on the next one, guys. And remember, buy now, but just don't overpay. And if you're selling, choose your agent like your future depends on it, because it does. And don't overprice. See you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.